Hi, good evening. I think I should first explain what is a Chief Belief Officer. So the pressure is tremendous wherever I go. Okay, the only reason this designation was created is to startle people. Okay, to startle people to think about belief. That's all. Okay, I don't have a key result area. I don't have a key performance indicator. I do have a pay slip though. And if I might say, the freedom to talk anywhere for a fee and nobody bothers about it. So, see, the point of the conversation began somewhere a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, about this word belief. And the best way to define it, so let's define it. It means subjective truth. Your truth and my truth. And that's the definition we shall take. There can be hundreds of definitions. This is the easiest and simplest definition. Your truth versus my truth. And you have to ask yourself whether this plays a key role in business. That's as simple as that. If you believe that different people in the world think differently, and therefore have different subjective truths that they occupy, then it becomes critical in business. It all depends on how you define business. How do you define business? Do you define your business or your organization as a set of targets, as a set of tasks, as a set of rules, or as a set of people? If you believe you are a set of people, then people's subjectivity matters. Your client's subjectivity matters. Your employee's subjectivity matters. Your vendor's subjectivity matters. The subjectivity of the regulator matters. And then belief becomes important. So that's the context in which I will be speaking. And that's where I come. Because when we use the word management science, everybody is using logic and rationality, forgetting one very fundamental point. Human beings are not rational creatures. It's something very fundamental, and I'm surprised that I have to tell it. That we are not rational. We do stupid things. Just look at our purchasing patterns. Just look at, I'm in the retail space, so it's just fun to see what people buy and why they buy. There are bags which cost 8 lakh rupees and they're sold off the rack like in discount rates. And it reveals that there is so much happening in the human mind and barely a percentage of it is rational. So first get that out of the table, that the person, your client is a rational person. No, he is not. Your boss is certainly not rational. दर्द की आवाज आ गई. What we often do is we rationalize things. There's a difference between being logical and rationalizing things. So I remember talking to this major FMCG company which has got this wonderful product which is a super duper hit. So I asked the person, it's my principle, I don't give names of organizations, I just don't. I speak only at idea level. So I spoke to this gentleman and I said, so what was the magic? So he said, no magic, it just succeeded. Now I have the burden of explaining it. So he has these decks with 40 slides which nobody understands. Because then the investor feels that he has done something. And that's the thing, we have to understand that we rationalize things. And I'm amazed at some of the case studies that are presented, they're amazed at, presented by some of the most, we worship those educational institutions, honestly for the degree and the number that they give us. Because some of the data which they are sharing is, well, Harry Potter. But I shall not go there because then I shall not get invitations to those universities. But I will talk right now about globalize, innovate, and collaborate. These words were so grand and lovely that I didn't have anything to speak on it. So I decided that let me understand these words. Let's go deeper into these words and try to understand their origins, the mythic origins of this. Now the reason, what I'll do is I'll be just telling you all stories today. So basically there's no business happening right now. We are just going to tell you stories, much like any balance sheet. And so enjoy yourselves. So sorry. Okay, I think I have taken too much coffee today. So let's begin. I'll begin with the word innovation because it's like the most popular word on earth. So doctors have also started using it. We are very innovative. So that's the impact. Yeah, really. Next time you're getting a heart stent, you will hear that. But what is the New World Order? The New World Order is the world order which has been created with the internet. What has internet done? All national boundaries have collapsed. Suddenly, we belong to a very strange world called the virtual world. And no matter how hard you try, you can't create borders there. No matter how many firewalls you have, you just can't create those borders. And that's the world we live in. Suddenly, everybody is on Facebook. Everybody is on Twitter. Everybody is talking this technology language, database, numbers, inputs. This world didn't exist 50 years ago. It's a new world for everyone. And therefore, it's important to step back and look at our humanity and understand what this world is doing to us in our minds. What is doing to our minds? Most of us, when we grew up, we didn't hear of the internet. We didn't know about mobile phones. Most of us heard about it, depending on how old or young you are, in your early teens. And then suddenly this world opened. It keeps expanding and it's not over. It's going to expand more and more and more as more ideas come about. The world is changing dramatically and it's frightening. Because we would like to be with the wave, but we may not be. We just might drown. And that creates great anxiety for us. So with that in mind, let's understand what is this word innovation. And I shall go to periods of history where internet was not even in the imagination. And the idea of it, and that's where I come from. My whole attraction is the human animal has not changed. We are exactly what we were 100,000 years ago. From a pure neurophysiological point of view, we have not changed. What has changed is the stimulus around us. So if you understand human history, the problem with human history, and I never study history, is because what you actually hear is narratives of the victorious. So I'm more interested in stories that people tell children. That's very powerful. Because what is it that you tell your child? You will tell your child what matters to you. So the story that you tell your child is, you are basically giving him what you consider as good, bad, right, wrong, beautiful, ugly, your notions of appropriate conduct. And that's what happens in that few minutes of conversation that you have with your child. Now replicate this conversation, this parent-child conversations across the world. It's happening across the world. It's also happening through time. It's happening through time. But then you observe something very particular. You observe that the story that is told in different parts of the world is very different. And because they're different, the children in different parts of the world are different. And the people in different parts of the world are different. And these different people will respond to stimuli very differently. So let's go through the stories. And I will just, it's a very vast subject. I'm just going to tell you about 3 major shifts in storytelling for you to understand this notion of subjective truth, and therefore belief, and then we shall see how it matters in our day-to-day life in the most modern context. So that's the whole thing. If belief is subjective truth, it's subjective, right? How do I get access to this subjectivity? I need a map. I need a map to enter your mind. And the map to your mind is the story that you hold most dear to you, which we call mythology. The story that is most dear to you or to your community or to your part of the world, that story is very important because it will allow me to access your mind. So let's go through the story, and we'll begin with this word innovate. Let's look at this word innovate through Greek mythology. Now, by Greek mythology, I mean the story that Alexander, this is Alexander the Great, one of the first persons to think about globalization. I don't know how many of you all knew he wanted to unite the world and bring ideas which he thought were noble to different parts of the world. And therefore, wherever he went around creating what is called Alexandria. But what was this gentleman? Who was this person? What were the stories he heard? I don't want to know about his family background. I just want to hear the stories he heard and the probable stories he heard. What we do know is that he used to go to sleep with the Iliad next to him. Iliad is the book written by Homer. It's a song which was written in 800 BC. And the stories, and I'm going to give the larger picture. The picture is very particular. It follows a particular pattern. This is what Greek mythology says. It says that in the beginning, the world was chaotic. It was completely chaotic, and gradually order came into being. And this order came with a series of, for want of a better word, revolution. First, it was the giants. The giants ruled the world. They were malformed creatures. They were replaced by the titans. The titans were smarter, wiser than the giants. And then after the titans came the Olympians, what we have, the Zeus and Apollo and Athena. These were the gods who came. And with each succession of divinity, the life became more and more organized, orderly, rational. And that's what happened to the world. This is the narrative. This comes from Hesiod's Theogony. And that's how it happens. Now at the poem, so what is Alexander being told? He's being told that there is a mountain called Mount Olympus. On Mount Olympus sit the Olympian gods. They control everything in this world, nature, culture. They are responsible for your success. They are responsible for your failure. They control everything. You are not supposed to challenge them because they decide your fate. They decide how long you will live and the quality of your life. They spin the spin fabric which decides how long you should live and when should you die. And if you oppose them, you will be punished. You will be sent to Tartarus and you will be asked to do boring, monotonous jobs like this. Every day in the morning, you will push a boulder up the mountain. At night, it will roll down and you'll do it again and again and again and again. Sounds familiar? This is what you get. So Alexander obviously was like, so is that the only fate? Is my life tied? Am I going to be under the shadow of authority? I refuse to be. I want to be special. I want to be spectacular. I want to be great. Alexander the Great. And this is what the mother would say, that if you do something extraordinary, the gods will oppose you. They will stop you. They will not let you succeed. But if you succeed, if you're determined and you really succeed, you will get a special place. When you die, you will go to a place called Elysium, which is the heaven of heroes. And so, when you read Greek mythology, like the Iliad and the Odyssey, it's all adventure stories. Stories of young men who are forced into difficult circumstances and they work very hard to come out of it. And when they come out of it, they're triumphant and they are what is called apotheosis. They become gods themselves. So Iliad talks about a character called Achilles. When he participates in battle, there is victory. When he withdraws from battle, there is defeat. He is this arrogant man. Everybody loves him. He is this larger-than-life character. When you read Odysseus, it is about Odyssey. You read about Odysseus, who is fighting Poseidon, the god of the sea, who does not want him to return home. And he struggles and he struggles and he finally reaches home after 20 years. But he does. That makes him spectacular. That makes him a god. That makes him a hero. And that's where the word hero came from. The great who fights the status quo, who destroys the authority and creates a new world order. It is from this thought that you have ideas like subversion, out-of-the-box thinking, innovation, where you don't accept situation as it is. You refuse to accept reality that you have inherited. You fight. You struggle. You refuse to be Sisyphus. And that's fundamentally what innovation is all about. I will not accept that this is the only way world can be. There must be something new. There must be a new way of thinking. And so when you think especially of Apple computers, what do you think? That's the story of Steve Jobs, right? That's what comes about. Changing the rules all the time. And that's what you see when you're talking about products in the market. It's always about break the market, change the rules. Come up, suddenly BlackBerry comes and changes the rules. Then you have got these smartphones, they change the rules. Constantly changing, refusing to submit to authority. And so when you read Greek culture, read about Greek culture, you come upon something called the Olympic Games. What is the Olympic Games? It's just that you're running 100 yards, that's it. But the point is to be faster than others, to break records, to be stronger than the other, to be better than the other. And so you're constantly propelled towards victory. Now, this is the notion of success. Look at them, running hard. What do they win at the end of it? Just a laurel wreath, that's all. But the whole idea of breaking records. And from here comes the mindset of what we call those Fortune 500 companies. What is your ranking? Where do you stand? Every year, the Olympic Games of our mind, where we get awards for being better than others. And therefore, you want to be there. And therefore, you want to be innovative. You want to be the great hero. You want to be Achilles. You want to be Theseus and Jason. We are propelled by that. Underlying this, there is a simmering rage, anger. Because this is what Alexander was told. He was told that father is cruel. Look at this photograph. It shows an old man eating a child. This is his own son. This is the older generation and this is the next generation. These are the old gods and this is the new god. And the old god is threatened by the new god and constantly wants to consume him for fear that he'll overthrow. And this is a recurring thing in Greek mythology. The father is threatened by the child is killed, but one day the child triumphs and becomes the hero. So authority is bad, revolution is good. All these ideas are Greek in nature, Greek story. So let's start moving east. You come towards what is called the Near East and the Middle East, and the story changes dramatically. No talk of innovation. Now you have talk of collaboration, of compliance, of alignment. And you have biblical narratives. Now biblical narrative is a very vast term. It's a very, very vast term. Although I've used the word biblical, please don't think of it as the Bible, but it's a very larger idea. But I'm using Bible as an example so that you understand what I'm saying. And the story here is dramatically different. So look at the book of Exodus. Very important book if you want to study leadership. You can't study leadership unless you read the book of Exodus because it explains so many ideas very beautifully. It speaks of a group of people who live in abject slavery, miserable conditions. They're denied respect and dignity. They're denied resources. They are to build the Pharaoh's pyramid. Until one day, a man comes there, the Messiah, the prophet. And what does the prophet do? He tells them that I will take you to the promised land. Now, have you seen the promised land? No. Do you know where it is? No. Trust me. Follow me across the sea, across the wilderness, and we'll find the land of milk and honey. And there you shall be happy. You know what this is called in the corporate world? It's called a vision statement. Imagine, what do you do when you stand in front of the investor? You tell, this is my vision, this is my mission, this is my objective, this is my target, this is my goal, this is where I want to go. Have you seen this place? No. But I have imagined it and I have rational data to prove I can get there. And the investor believes you and puts his money in his pocket and gives you the money to go ahead. He trusts your vision of the promised land. You are the prophet. He expects you to take him to the land of milk and honey, and trust me, he'll make sure you get there. At a structural level, at a Remove the story, just look at the essence of the narrative. So you're following the person because you trust him. You see, and as you go, you are told you shall follow rules. There are rules to follow. We call them systems, processes, standard operating procedures. You have to follow if you want to reach the promised land. You have to collaborate. You have to work with each other. You have to travel together. You must not fight. Work as a team. And what is the one problem that is recurring when you read the book, the Exodus? There's only one problem, and you're all familiar with the problem. You said they're demanding alignment. They're demanding that everybody goes along this line, compliance, alignment. And what's the problem? The problem is non-compliance. Even when God gives his rules in writing and sets it in stone, people find it difficult to follow. It is difficult to follow. We want to do our own thing. But the rules say 9 o'clock the cards have to be swiped, and you will have to swipe it. For the sake of the organization, please collaborate, please cooperate, please comply, or get out. And that's the struggle of the prophet. He's telling, I'm taking you. And here, the narrative is very different. The narrative here is, Father is not cruel. Here, the Father is caring. He's kind. Look at this image. I don't know if it's very clear to you, but it shows a young man with a nail and a hammer. He's the person who crucifies Jesus Christ. And he's being forgiven. He's the prodigal son. What does it mean? What is the mean? Look at the difference between the Greek narrative, where there is suspicion of authority, and here there's submission to authority. Because authority is good. Father is good. He cares for you. It's coming from a very different mindset. So the narratives are very different. So at one side is this innovative mindset which says that I refuse to accept things as they are. The other is the collaborative mindset that the things as they are very good. Let's just work with each other because Father cares for you. Two different mindsets. Which is right? Which is correct? And that's where we come to globalization. Because as you move east from Greece through the Middle East, you come to India. I'm not going to go to China. No, not today, not today. For that you have to call me for a repeat session. So, but, because that's a different narrative completely. It's a very different narrative. I'm just going to go this way. As I said, I promised you 3 stories. You know, like Arabian Nights, tomorrow night there shall be another story. But, this is what happens, which is the right way. Both are saying that he says, Father is cruel, Father is caring. Innovation is good, collaboration is good. Defiance is good, compliance is good. They're seeking the right way because both of them fundamentally come from cultures which believe you live only once. And when you live only once, you want to live the right way. You don't want to make mistakes. You want to get it right. You don't want to be in for a rude shock when you die. You know, all your life you thought caring father, and there he is ready to pounce on you. It usually happens during appraisal time. And so what do you do? So this argument of finding the right way, in a way this is objective truth. What is right? When you say right, you're talking about objectivity, truth which is independent of human imagination. And you're arguing, you're having this great argument, and this is the origin of binary thought. 1, 0. Because there can only be this or that, nothing else, and that leads to conflict. This is the conflict. Now, which is right, 1 or 0, 1 or 0, and there's constantly this conversation happening, and finally they decide to move east, and they come to the river Indus, and in the Indus they find a very strange person. They find the gymnosophist, which basically in Greek means the naked wise man, gymnos, sophos. 2 words. Now, we don't know who he was, and this is of course stories. This is Bahubali, the image of Bahubali, so probably he was a Jain Muni, probably he was a yogi, we don't know. And the story goes that Alexander asked him, that what are you doing? And the gymnosophist said, I am experiencing nothingness. And then the gymnosophist asked Alexander, what are you doing? And Alexander said, I'm conquering the world. And both of them started to laugh because each one thought the other is a fool. And after the laughter had died down, Alexander asked him, tell me which is the right way. Is father cruel or kind? Is compliance better or defiance better? Is innovation the purpose of life or collaboration the purpose of life? And guess what the Indian answer was? He couldn't speak their language, so he did a body gesture, which is very popular. It's called the Indian head shake. He moved his head this way. And what he basically meant, and those who understand this coded language, it basically means, ye bhi theek hai, wo bhi theek hai. This is okay, that is okay. And look at this. And I can see that a lot of people not from India over here, so I'll explain it. Look at this picture. These are the two great epics of India. On one side is Ramayana, and the other side is Mahabharata. Over here is Ram, who is called Maryada Purushottam Ram, the one who always complies. Very biblical. Linear thinking, must follow. Father is good. Collaborate. Give your brother the kingdom. It's okay. Maryada Purushottam Ram. Very biblical in thinking, if you look at it. Purely at an idea level. It's about compliance and alignment. On the other side, you have Leela Purushottam Krishna. It's all about defiance. So, Chit Chor, he who steals heart. Makhan Chor, he who steals butter. Bends and breaks every rule. He's also called Rana Chod, one who runs away from the battlefield. Strange character. Very different from each other. He kills his own uncle, the father, the cruel father. He submits to the father who tells him, go, leave the house and stay in the forest. See the similarity. And both the stories exist. The lady over here is his lawfully wedded wife, Sita, Mrs. Ram. If you want to embarrass Indians, just ask them what is the relationship between Radha and Krishna. Conservative India will hate you. Because nobody is really sure. Nobody is sure. What you are sure is it is not Mrs. Krishna. And look at this. And you ask, so which is better? So imagine asking a devout Hindu, Ram is better, Krishna is better. He'll come up with an Indian answer. They are both the same. They are both avatars of the same God, Vishnu. Sometimes father is caring and sometimes father is cruel. Sometimes you innovate and sometimes you collaborate. Sometimes you comply and sometimes you defy, depending on the context. Depending on who you are dealing with, depending on market factors, depending on how much fire is burning, depending on have you achieved your target or not. So compliance, 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 target not being achieved, defiance, 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 defiance. So context keeps changing, and this can be very exasperating for someone who wants you to be one or the other. So you have the notion of the same God being a fish, a turtle, a boar, a lion. Now, is this the same or different? Look at them. They are distinct entities. So is it different or the same? And Indians will say same, but different. Now, trust me, it's extremely exasperating when you say this to a European or an American. Because what do you actually mean? What is this? And this is what you have to deal with in a global world order. This is globalization. And this is one of the reasons, because many realities coexist. The opposite of what you believe is also true. And that's the whole thing. You will see in India the most expensive cars. This is the market for Mercedes. It is also the land of the bullock cart. And the road belongs to both. It also belongs to the cow, the dog, the elephant, to the squatter, and maybe the politician. But that's the reality of the land, and that's what you have to deal with. The multiple realities coexisting. Now, India in many ways is a microcosm of the world. This is the microcosm of the world. Just expand it, and that's how the world is. Different parts of the world. So this is India, this is China, this is Japan, this is Germany, this is France, this is America, this is South America, this is Central America, Africa, Australia, humanity. We behave differently in different socio-political conditions, and we have to deal with it. You can't have one narrative or the other. You need both in different doses. And therefore you have different gods and goddesses. It explains this need that I can't stick to one idea. It's very difficult. Standardization or customization? Ask the question, what is more efficient? Standardization. What is more effective? Customization. Make your choice. What do you want? What gives you joy as a person? When you go home, do you want a customized dinner or a standardized dinner? When you go to a friend's house, do you want a standardized meal or do you want a customized meal? Oh, I know you have milk allergies, so I've made something special for you. It feels good. Trust me, you'll sign the contract that very day. And that's what you do with clients. You understand their customized needs. You know, that's what will get you the contract, not standardization because it looks good on your balance sheet. And that's the great struggle of life, right? That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to achieve. And therefore, you have different values. When you live only once, and by once, when I'm using one life, replace the word life with context. If you believe that there is only one context in this world, then the value of your life is the sum total of your achievements. But if you believe you live infinite lives, then no matter what you do, the value is zero. It is determined by the context you are in. I don't know how many of you all know in India, you're constantly people are trained. How do you talk to people? You talk differently to your father, you talk differently to your mother. You talk differently to your paternal uncle and you talk differently to your maternal uncle. You talk differently to the neighbor, you talk differently to the help. You're constantly customizing. Your language, your diction, it's changing constantly. You're used to it. It's not a big deal. So it becomes very difficult when you go to a culture, when everybody talks about, let's be transparent. How will you be transparent? How do I document these variations that I have in life? The number of variations, different clients. I'm not going to tell you what I did with that client. I'm not going to be transparent about my contract which I signed with that client, with that market, in that condition. I'm not going to reveal it. And these are ideas, very noble ideas. You should share. Gymnosophist loves transparency. But we are not gymnosophists. We like to wear our clothes. We like to hide things. And that brings us to a very interesting point, because when there is infinity, there is diversity. When you think of a singular context, you are talking in terms of efficiency, because one is always efficient. But the moment you talk about diversity, it's a very different dialogue, and you'll realize that they are almost in conflict with each other. Do you want efficiency or diversity in the global order? And that's the question you have to ask. If you want to succeed in South America, will you apply the rules of India? You can't. Efficiency says same rules, but diversity demands different rules. What will you choose? And that's the difficult question that we have to deal with in life. I know there are so many businesses which are going to South America, and you realize that they are very different. They are not like Europeans, they are not like North Americans, they are not like Australians, they are not like, they are their own people with their own ideas of what is appropriate and inappropriate. You have to ask yourself what matters to you. They are not like you, they are different. You know, this rationality thing, everybody wants to be rational, and we'll say that no, forget about the prophet, forget about Alexander, forget about gymnosophist. Let's focus on mathematics. Let's focus on the number. Let's look at the balance sheet. It's all very fine. It's a very good idea. But the fact is, the customer doesn't like it. He wants to be pampered. He wants you to appreciate his subjective reality. He wants you to focus on his balance sheet and his problems. Whether it aligns with your balance sheet, doesn't care. Look at this. America is a multicultural society. We know that. But the US dollar bill has only one language on it. Very efficient. So everywhere in America you travel, the road signs are in English, very clear. This is an Indian rupee. They have minimized it to 17 languages. Try doing road signs with it. In which language should Indian road signs be? And factor in the fact that most people are not educated. And I'll give you a blank check. Come on, come up with an innovative idea for road signs in India. For the drunk truck driver. And then you realize the problem of logistics in India. I'll never forget, I gave this lecture to these logistics students, and they said, so what should we do in India? I said, how many of you all have taken one truck drive from Delhi to Calcutta and seen the warehouses on the way, seen the living conditions in the way, seen the octroi duties on the way? None of them had. All they knew were Excel sheets and databases and this new software technology. I said, that's not life. That makes things efficient. But the reality is this horrible road which connects Delhi to Calcutta. And unless you know that reality, you won't succeed in this market. And this road from Delhi to Calcutta could be anywhere. It could be in Africa, it could be in South America, Canada, anywhere. And that's the reality. We have to understand that people speak different languages. In a global order, what will the currency be? This or something else? When you think in a singular context, look at a classical Western meal. Soup, salad, main course, dessert. You eat exactly what the chef has prepared. It's perfect. It's wonderful cuisine. But imagine a world order with different tastes and different palates, different aromas, and then you come to the Indian thali. All served simultaneously, you pick and choose, you mix and match. The cook really doesn't know what you're eating because you're mixing things in different proportions. It's the ultimate in customization. You know, the problem is when I use the Indian thalis, it can come across as jingoistic. But that's not the point. And if you're seeing it at a jingoistic level, then you're missing the point. So please don't look at it at a jingoistic level. Look at an idea. Look at the idea of diversity. How complex it is and how difficult it is, because it will make you compromise on efficiency. And are you willing to compromise? That's the question. Let's look at the two stories that I'll take. One from Greek mythology, only for the sake of convenience, and one from a folk narrative from India to explain the idea. And again, look at it at an idea level. Don't get stuck with the locality or the geographical roots of the narrative. So that's the only problem with these sessions. I'm a little wary of it. This is a story from Greek mythology of Bellerophon. One day, he comes across a strange customer. This customer has the head of a lion, is part goat and a part serpent. It is a kind of an animal that you have never seen in your life. You know what a goat is, you know what a snake is, you know what a lion is, but this is an amalgamation of all three. So what does Bellerophon do to this? He calls it a monster and kills it. He categorizes it, organizes it, creates a clean animal that he can understand. Then you meet another customer. An amalgamation of 9 animals: rooster, peacock, human, elephant, bull, serpent, tiger, deer, lion. What do? Try to destroy this. Try to organize this. You will never succeed. So what you do is you bend down and pray to it. Because this is the new world order. Everybody won't think like you. They will not align to the best practices even if the topmost consultancy firm endorses it. The world is different. We forget that internet penetrates a very small proportion of humanity. It doesn't go deep down. The reality is that, which means there's a huge market out there. But it also means if you want to approach that market, you have to appreciate their subjective reality. And so when you think of globalization, innovation, collaboration, please remember, yes, there are cruel fathers. Yes, there are caring fathers. Yes, it is important to comply. It is important to defy. But sometimes it is important to accept the fact that in this world of diversity, efficiency sometimes has to be compromised. If you want to know more about these ideas, please read my book, Business Sutra, because it talks about this idea, this whole notion of diversity. I always tell people, who should teach the world about diversity if not India? We have 6,000 communities, people of every possible economic strata, social strata, different ideas. You have to go to a parliament and it is scary. They speak in different languages, some of them unparliamentary. And you will learn what diversity is. How do you get these people to work? How do you ensure that they have the system? How do you sell them one system? This is the best learning ground. So learn. And I'm sure you will all succeed in your respective businesses. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have time for a few questions. Yep. Can someone moderate it if you don't mind? One person if they can moderate.
Questions?
Do you mind keeping the slide over here? Keep the slide so I'll keep going back and forth with them. It's okay not to ask questions, but yes, please. Yes, sir.
So back in your future group, I mean, how do you manage the diversity of career aspirations, of individuals? Because on one side, you're running a business and you want to standardize that.
Yeah.
But the career aspirations are probably the most diverse stuff. And how do you sort of marry these two, in your own context? Or
see, I'm not head-on into the business, but I do know that, you see, what happens is when, that's where the induction is most important. I remember the induction at one particular time was a long 3-month process, especially at the CEO level. The purpose of it was to say that in a fast-growing market, you have to be nimble. If you have to be nimble, I can't give you actually a job description. You just have to do what needs to be done. Which means I can't tell you, okay, this is the 10 jobs you're going to do, and this is what you're going to get, and this is the remuneration you'll get. Because the org structure would change within a month. Because the market changes so fast. And that is what enables you to rapidly ramp up the structures and organizations. So that induction was very important to break the mindset and to think more plastic. So to be plastic. Now the problem is when you structure everything, structure is very efficient, as I said, it allows efficiency. But the problem is it also makes you very slow. And therefore that conversation, especially with the leadership, is critical, absolutely critical. And that's, I think, somewhere percolates down the line that, it will not be a fair organization. There will be people who will get hurt. And you have to be matured about it. It's very nice to think that everybody will be satisfied with the appraisal system. It never happens. Ask any HR head. Ask any entrepreneur. It doesn't happen. We plan so many things. Our intentions are good, but it is a complex world order. And I think that conversation is missing nowadays because we are so busy task orientation and target orientation and rule orientation that we have forgotten that we don't talk. We send emails. We send text messages with smileys. It doesn't make up for conversations to clarify the subjective truth of the organization. So I think investment in conversations, very difficult to find that time. But I know people have found out innovative methods of doing it. For example, I know board of directors who ensure that every Monday they'll have coffee together. It sounds like a very simple thing, but it's not because they travel all over the world, which means on Monday they have to make sure they are in India and they are having coffee. And it's a very difficult thing, but they have succeeded 80% of the time. And that simple act, that simple ritual has enabled them to understand better. The rage and interdepartmental rivalry has gone down substantially. So perhaps that's a, yes, sir.
So your discussion so far was, I could sense that it was aimed at outsiders understanding how Indians are. If I take an Indian and I say, I would like you to understand how to work with, say, Americans or Europeans or whoever, in the same context, how do you get the guy with the nod to start saying, yes, I will commit to the software development date, and not just nod this way because I want to be wishy-washy about it? So what is the same lecture for an Indian to understand how to become a global spokesman?
See, if you want to succeed in the market, okay. If you want to succeed in any market, you have to empathize with your customer. If your customer doesn't understand this and you're doing this, you're an idiot. Step one. So let's get that clarified. Mera Bharat Mahan doesn't get you anywhere. So let's get that straight. However, it's also your job to explain to the customer that this has value. Don't mock it. It allows India to allow, you have 1.2 billion people living in the subcontinent with only 4% of the world's GDP. It's a miracle we are not killing each other. There must be something going right. Our population has doubled since independence, tripled really. We have not massacred humanity. We have had riots, but do the math, do the statistics. This helps. Thoda.
No, but again, you're coming back to the Indian side of it. If you want that money to come from there,
yes,
you want their business, they are the customer.
Yes.
So you have to learn how to behave in their culture.
Yes.
So I'm asking you, how do you tell an Indian?
Same thing. See, the conversation doesn't change. Empathy is empathy, but empathy is a two-way street. It's not that I have to change for you, but I have to also enable you to change for me. You see, it is that thing. The conversation is not one-sided. You see, the old word for globalization was colonization. Let's be careful of that. Globalization is not colonization, and certainly not intellectual colonization. It's our duty to share our knowledge with the rest of the world and take knowledge from the rest of the world. It's not which is better or worse. It depends on what is right for the context. In a global, imagine we will be able to tell how do you do business with a Japanese customer, a Chinese customer, a European customer, and Europe is by no means homogeneous. A French customer, a German customer, Scandinavian companies are worlds apart. A North American customer is different from South America. So you have the power to understand diversity. So while you learn efficiency from the West, teach diversity from the East. And that's called a dialogue. So let's really collaborate. And that's the whole thing. The conversation has to be two ways, not one way. We have to be careful about that.
The next question from this side, if you...
Yes, sir.
Right here. So you spoke about conversation and almost the lack of it in today's life.
Yes.
I'm referring to the other book by Gurcharan Das on, the difficulty of being good, where he talks more about almost the absence of negotiating skills in today's life and why he writes that. Would you want to talk a bit about that? And
see, negotiation skills presupposes, conversation has no particular agenda. It's having an adda. and sitting and chatting. I remember I was talking to this company, this parent company. They were a Scandinavian company, and they were the mother company to an Indian company. And then, due to circumstances, the Indian company took over the Scandinavian company. So the equations changed dramatically. And we were sitting and we were having this conversation on intercultural dialogue and all the kind of things. And I asked the CEOs, how much time do you spend talking to each other? And suddenly I just said, do mathematics. Tell me how many minutes in a day, in a week, in a month. And first they made a note of how many times they met and spoke, either virtually or really. And I said, how much percentage of it was related to targets and tasks, and how much was it related to people? So do you know whether he has a son or daughter? Do you know whether he's married or not? Do you know what are his anxieties? And they realized they didn't. So you don't see the other as a human being, you see the other as an iPad. You know, and the problem is humans are not iPads, I checked. You know, it's connecting with people is not as simple as a like button. You know, and that's the whole thing, we're forgetting this. Our human anxieties are placing, your customer is a human being here, and we want to be professional, basically we want to cut out our emotions. When you cut out your emotions, empathy won't exist. Diversity won't exist. You'll be so efficient that you'll kill each other. And that's what's happening, and it's a danger. The fact that you have conferences like this is moments to think about these things. Because that's what happens in a world which is not thinking and saying that one way is the right way. It is never the right way. Dialogues have to happen. And we have to understand what is a dialogue. It's not networking. Yes, networking is good. We all love it. It has its value. But conversation is intimacy. To go beyond what you do and your visiting card to who are you as a person. Now that's very difficult, and remember it's very threatening because you're actually going to enter spaces of mind that I don't want you to enter. But it's there where certain friendships happen, and why shouldn't professionals be friends? And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves in a new world order. You know, we talk about corporate social responsibility, we talk of these words in such technical language. In Hindi there is a word, it's called bhav. Bhav nahi hai, there is no emotion fluidity. And that's really serious affair. In a world that is getting far more closer and closer to each other. If you're going to live in the same flat, you better start talking to each other, otherwise we'll kill each other. And I think that's the conversation. So it's not about negotiations, it's not about arm wrestling, it's not about who is right and who is wrong, and I'll let you win today and tomorrow you let me win. No, that's not the point. It's about understanding my fear and knowing your fears. And that's not an easy journey. It's not an easy journey at all.